Not a very eventful chapter, guys. You want to
Yeah, yeah, right. Real quick, the canister is not Kvothe's canister; it's the canister that looks different.
Oh, like the main one?
There is
Yeah, the
a
bone tar
canister that holds
canister.
bone tar, and you go up to it and you can put some into your vial, and you have to seal it really quick and blah blah blah. But yeah, the canister looked odd. The canister was frosted. Like if you've ever done nitrous, if you've ever had a big if you've ever had a big nitrous tank, if you ever went to a party where they had a big nitrous tank,
I'm not a hooligan.
And you fill up the balloons, eventually it can frost. And then once you starts to frost up, that's what I pictured with this bone tar canister.
Not to be a nerd here, but yeah, it's a pressure thing. If you take the pressure off, pressure and temperature are relative. If you take the pressure off of a canister like that somewhat quickly, or at least over a period of time, it forms frost. I do refrigeration work, so I know that for sure.
Well, the first thing that I find interesting in this chapter is he says, knowing it would be useless to attempt to get back to sleep, I headed to the fishery. So he goes there early in the morning before he normally goes. The reason I think that's interesting is what causes the bone tar to break the glass vial that was holding it and then crack through the container is that it was too cold. The sigildry got damaged that keeps it cold, and then it just kept getting colder and colder until the glass shattered. So I tend to think that there might be someone behind the scenes was trying to get Kvothe out of the way, and that it wasn't damaged on accident. I think that it might have been someone intentionally damaged it. But the problem with that theory is Kvothe doesn't normally go early in the morning.
Yeah.
So how would he know that Kvothe was going to go there unless he's got some type of clairvoyance, or he was thinking like if he damages it, Kvothe's going to go to the fisheries, see what happened, miss his dinner, but obviously he wouldn't know Kvothe well enough. Like Kvothe would let everybody burn in the entire university before he'd miss a dinner with lunch with Denna. But I think that someone intentionally did it, but then I think what this throws into question is why they did it. What was their ultimate goal with doing it?
It's also a real long shot that it's going to impact Kvothe specifically.
Yeah.
Right? Because like you said, he's not typically there in the mornings. And even if it happened, even if destroying the sigildry took longer to take effect, and then it took effect later in the day, maybe he's not around, maybe he doesn't go that day. There's so many things that could go haywire where that wouldn't, really take effect. It's definitely suspicious as hell, because it seems like this doesn't just happen, right? Like, at least that I got that impression.
Well, it could be that, hold on. It could be that the guy, whoever damaged it, if someone intentionally damaged it, that he has some type of clairvoyance. So he knew by doing that, the train of events that would happen that would get Kvothe out of the way. Could be that. Or it could just be that Kvothe wasn't part of the plan to begin with. He had some other intention, some other motive. Maybe he wanted to get in the fishery when everybody was out of there. Because like Kvothe, when he goes back, no one's in there. Maybe he was trying to get in. Like, now that I say that, what it could have been is that the other Gaelet, like Devi, the guy that he goes and meets, Kvothe and him are having a conversation together, and they're talking about like, hey, I heard that after the fishery went up, that you went in, or someone went in, and they stole a bunch of stuff, and then they were you were rumored to have been selling it. So now that I say that in my head, maybe he did it. And it was a train of events that fucked Kvothe, but his intention was to get in there and just rob the fishery. And it almost got fella killed, and Kvothe, had to save her, but maybe it was that guy did it.
So wait, so that went down successfully? Someone stole a bunch of stuff from the fishery and was able to sell it?
Yeah.
So it was successful. Whatever little heist they had was successful.
Yeah. Now, it could be that he did it.
That's interesting.
he just took advantage of the situation. But now that I think about that, I don't know why I never put that together. And now that makes me think he's the one that did it.
So I'm trying to picture how you destroy the Sigildry, because I know how Kvothe does it with the drench, but does someone scratch it?
Yeah,
because I'm also
you could
picturing
just scratch
the
it. Like,
icebox.
that's all he does to get out of, or like when he's in Ambrose's room, he was thinking like, all I got to do is scratch it. And then he was like, oh shit, if I do that, then everybody's going to know that someone who knows Sigildry is the one that got out. So you could just scratch it and that would damage it. And also like the ice box that's in Anchors.
Yeah, that's what I was
When it stops
thinking,
working, it was just because it got scratched. So
Yeah.
just scratching a ruin would damage it. So it could be as simple as that. But it seems like someone intentionally did it.
Yeah, I mean, especially with something that's so volatile, something that's so dangerous, you would think the way the Sigildry would be utilized or put into the object itself would be in the safest of ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you wouldn't do a sloppy job of it. So that would also say whoever did it. And I kind of the way that I would buy this,
they had to be
the
good.
theory. Well, yes, but the way that I buy the theory that you're bringing up would be someone that has access to some sort of clairvoyance. So they would also know exactly how to mess with the Sigildry and exactly when, and they would know all the specifics, which hints at like a Chandrian sort of individual or something.
Well, if it's the Gaelet, then he just did it because he was like, I'll fuck this up, and then when shit goes to hell in a handbasket, I'll step in when everybody clears out, and I'll steal some shit, and then I'll sell it.
That's a pretty... that's a really knowledgeable Gaelet. Like, very experienced.
Well, I mean, he went to the university. He was knowledgeable. He was,
I don't remember all these things about
as well. Like, so he would be in a position where, like, he would know how to damage Sigildry. Especially, he seems to be a knowledgeable and a person who can gain access. He's the one that gets the schema, or he could have got a schema for Kvothe to make a Graham, so he has
I remember that.
knowledge on these kind of things. He would be capable of acquiring the knowledge to know what to do, and it could be that he did it. It still could also be, like Rothfuss likes to do. There's multiple different scenarios for how it could be an accident. It could be
Ambrose.
It could be Denna's patron. I would be surprised if it was Ambrose. I don't know what he would have to gain. But
well, I think he's candidate number one, not only because he tries to kill Kvothe 2 chapters later, but because he has access to the fishery, or at least someone he knows does, who he can pay to go in there, wait for Kvothe to come, and when Kvothe comes, I'll give you 3 gold eagles to make that shit break and kill him or kill everybody.
Yeah, but the problem with that, it was damaged before he got there.
Well, the thing about the Ambrose theory, I think it's a bit much, but the thing that would make it almost credible to me is that this is one of the things that launches Kvothe to absolute hero status. So, because every time him and Ambrose try to fuck with him, he wins one over big time, right? So, I mean, he saves fella's life. Everybody at the university now knows this dude is a legit hero.
It works out to his advantage for sure.
I also think that Ambrose could be behind it. He's not going to do it himself.
I think that my top guesses would be that it was Denna's patron for some reason. That Gaelet, I think, is my top suspect now, or it was somebody else that had some kind of nefarious means that we don't really understand exactly what was going on there yet. But I'd be surprised if it was an accident and we don't discover who did it, unless Rothfuss was trying to, when he had that interaction between Kvothe and that guy and they discuss him stealing something from the fishery, unless that was the clue and that's the only answer we're going to get. I would think that we might get an answer in the third book.
What about when Kvothe goes back in after he gets bandaged up and everything? He goes back in and to finish his work, which I thought was crazy anyway. Right, like a couple hours or whatever after it happens, he goes back in to finish his emitters, and it's nobody's there. In fact, Kilvin's not there. Kilvin comes in like trying to shrug somebody off of him from the Medica. Am I right about that? Like,
that's what I was saying. The motivation was likely to clear out the fishery, and that Galet took advantage of the fishery being cleared out by stealing a bunch of shit and then selling it. Since there was no other means to get that shit, he jacked up the prices on people, I believe.
I've been suspicious that someone was behind it. Going into this, I didn't have a theory as to who. What you bring up about the Galet is the most sound to me in terms of a theory. But like you said, the way Rothfuss did this, it's very wide open, and it could be a number of different individuals. It's very unlikely, as per usual, that it's left to happenstance. But he leaves that open. He always don't hear about it. Not always, but
yeah. And if we don't hear about it in the third book, then I'll be convinced it was the Galet, and that conversation was our clue. Because if there's no other explanation, that's the only one I can come up with. That's the clearest example of an explanation. I just, for whatever reason, it wasn't clicking in my head until just this moment. But I think if it's not mentioned in the third book, it had to have been him.
Well, so since we're talking about it anyway, one of the things that did sort of jump out on me from the first read was, and putting myself in remembering the first read, I remember it jumped out at me that he didn't alert Kilvin. I thought Kvothe should have. Instead of just asking someone walking by and saying, hey, is this normal? And then just going with like Jackson just made a joke, sort of. Like, he was very flippant about it. He's like, better cold than hot, right? Or something along those lines. Yeah, better too cold than not cold enough.
Jackson is he went to someone who's high up at the fishery. He didn't just go to like some low level dude. Like, Jackson is higher ranking than him, and seemed to be like someone who would be knowledgeable.
True,
the
but
more problem I would have is, why didn't Jackson go to Kilvin?
I think what it was that made it more so that way for me is I caught the attention of one of the more experienced artificers, as he walked past. So to me, it seemed a bit lazy. Or maybe lazy is not the right word, but as he walked past, just sort of suggested to me. And again, I'm putting myself in the seat of the first reader, because I remember that kind of jumped out at me. And after the fact, Kilvin's like, yeah, Jackson's on his shit list, basically, because he told Kilvin that Kvothe brought it up, and Jackson didn't do shit. Now, we also know that Jackson...
it seems like, Kvothe went to chain of command and went to a guy that is below Kilvin, but should know better. Yeah. And Kilvin obviously thought he should know better. And so once he tells him, and that guy is like, oh, better too cold than hot.
Well, but then I was going to say, he went, ha ha, kaboom. Like, okay.
I thought
pretty flippant, man.
I thought Kvothe should have
he was so dismissive that put Kvothe at his ease.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
and I'm sure if Jackson's one of the more experienced guys, he's been around Bone Tar. This is Kvothe's first time around it. So, like, if he had gone to Manette and Manette said the same thing, I would have been like, well, if Manette's not worried about it, then why am I worried about it? Manette, he's been around this shit before. So, like, once that guy fucking says, no big deal, then, that doesn't seem outlandish for him to be like, okay.
So when we get, oh my God, the pace just jumps the fuck off. Like, he has a knack. Rothfuss has a real knack for writing these action-packed sequences where the pace literally, I almost feel like I want to break it down in terms of like the word, like how he gets it to flow so quickly. because it doesn't matter how many times I read it, you just get drawn in and the pace just quickens. And it happens again later in this group of chapters that we're going to cover. It's so effective.
Yeah, and it's besides just like the breakdown of the words themselves, but every sentence jumps from and is such a great description of what's actually happening. Every sentence just gives you, here's what happened next, here's what happened next, here's what happened next.
It's so killer too, because you hear popping and cracking, you see really ominous signs. So you get some smell. You get he brings in the physicality, like when he hits his hip on a table. Like it's freaking great, man. He's sweating. He's doing all these things.
I felt a flash of cold sweat roll over me when I saw black liquid leaking from one corner and running down the work table's leg to pool on the floor. The thick timber of the table's leg was almost entirely eaten away, and I heard a light popping and crackling as the liquid pooling on the floor began to boil. All I could think of was Kilvin's statement during the demonstration. In addition to being highly corrosive, the gas burns when it comes in contact with air. Even as I turned to look, the leg gave way and the work table began to tip. The burnished metal canister tumbled down. When it struck the stone floor, the metal was so cold it didn't simply crack or dent, it shattered like glass. Gallons of dark fluid burst out in a splay across the workshop floor, the room filled with sharp crackling and popping sounds as the bone tar spread across the warm stone floor and started to boil.
Man.
Yeah, what an incredible description that is.
Well, and it's perfect too because he's already built the danger.
Yeah, and then he explains how the floors are slanted, so it pulls down into things, and then you can picture fella being trapped in a corner where it's pulled down into two different paths that are both blocking her exit, and she's kind of just being squared in and painted into a corner. And at that point, it hadn't even ignited yet. Yeah, but she sees that fog, and it's a thick. It sounds like a thick, heavy fog that is surrounding her and boxing her in, and it's ready to catch flame. So she's in a hell of a position.
Yeah, he describes literally, which is so great, man, because he's describing the fishery is built to handle this sort of thing. Not this specifically, but it's built to handle this. So you get that physicality again with the floor, and then as you were both mentioning, at the same time it continued to boil, forming thick, low clouds, dark as tar, caustic, and ready to burst into flame. And then we get the description of fella being trapped between these two big spreading arms of dark fog.
Yeah, and it gives a good description. He does a really good job here where he points to the how big the danger is for her. She was dressed practically for work in the shop. Light trousers and gauzy linen shirt cuffed at the elbow. Her long, dark hair was pulled back into a tail, but still hung down to nearly the small of her back. She would burn like a torch. Yeah. But I do like that she wasn't wearing a stupid cloak. That was a nice touch.
Do we get a I didn't quite grasp how he got the drench glass to shatter. I mean, how did he use his own blood to make that thing break?
Well, good.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, he explains it to Kilvin. I had the same question when I read through it, because he talks about how he does it, but then it's still a little bit left. Rothfuss is fucking great, man, because he tells you the specifics of what he does, in that he grabs a glass hemisphere, he dashes it against one of the basalt blocks, it shatters, and he's left with a thin, curved shard of broken glass about the size of a palm. With his other hand, he grabs his cloak from the table, strides past the fume hood, and then he cuts his finger, presses his thumb against the edge of the piece of glass, and, we get blood, felt an unpleasant tugging sensation followed by a sharp pain, knowing I'd drawn blood. I smeared my thumb across the glass, spoke a binding. As I came to stand in front of the drench, I dropped the glass to the floor, concentrated, stepped down hard, crushing it with my heel. Now, what's interesting is when I saw that, and then he goes into how he felt it.
That's how he did it.
The cold. Well, yeah, but it still wasn't really clear. So I'm like, I couldn't understand why he got so drenched, what exactly happened. And then Kilvin talks about it about 10 pages later, where he says, oh, so you broke my binding. He's like, if the binding can make it work, then you can unwrite the binding and break the binding. So by breaking the binding, the drench is completely let go of all of the water. If I read
no. What he knew the binding for the
glass,
the glass. Like breaking the binding didn't break the glass. What broke the glass is he knew the binding, so he was able to bind the glass that he had in the shard of glass that he had in his hand.
Yeah.
And he bound it to the drench, the glass of the drench, and he used his blood on both to also bind those together. Then he stepped on the glass, the shard that he had, and he splintered that. And by splintering that splintered the glass of the drench, and it broke. But it wasn't because he broke the binding. He used the binding of how to make the twice tough glass to strengthen the connection between the shattered glass and the drench, so that when he smashed it would shatter that.
That's interesting.
That's what the binding. I guess he just knew how to bind them together because he knew the binding of twice tough glass.
I guess I get what confused me is when he explains it to Kvothe. He says, "I know the sigildry for twice tough glass. What I can make, I can break." So it's more direct than I thought. He's literally just breaking the glass by breaking the glass.
Yeah.
It's not as if he's unwriting the sigildry, which is what I took that from when
he wrote the sigildry onto the shard.
No. He didn't write the sigildry onto the shard.
No, he spoke the binding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He didn't write.
It had nothing to do with it. Had no sigildry was involved. It was pure. It's the same as when he stabs the guy and when he's fighting the bandits in the woods, when he binds one bowstring to 5 different bowstrings and he cuts it and he splits all their bowstrings. Mm-hmm. That's what he was doing. Except he knew the binding of the twice tough glass, so that's how he was able to bind the shattered glass to the twice tough glass and then break it.
What I love about this so much is and I see this with the Dracus, and I see this with the scene you just described. He very quickly just like assesses the scene, assesses what is around him, and then just goes. He doesn't think much. He just acts. And the way it's written is he's simply acting. It's what's so great about him talking to Kvothe about it later is we get to slow that back down and go back to the scene and then rehash what actually happened and like so get to see it sort of in slow motion after we saw it in full time or in real time. It's fucking great, man, like because he does it so quick. And this speaks to like what we've talked about so many times, and what I rehash so many times, is that he's at his best when he's not thinking so much, when he's simply acting. He does the most heroic things that he does. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and except maybe with
he
Florian.
Even mentions that.
With Florian's different. It's the sleeping mind type thing, but whatever. We can stay on this.
I like too that when the way he describes him jumping through the fire to get to her, like I could picture it vividly in my head. Yeah. I felt a brief, intense flash of heat on my hands and face, but my wet clothing kept me from being burned or catching fire. Since my eyes were closed, I landed awkwardly, banging my hip against the stone top of a work table. I ignored it and ran to Fella. Like the jumping through the flame, like a fog that is catching fire, jumping through that in the air, and then the nice added touch of he doesn't just like fucking land it perfectly and like standing in front of Fella like ta-da. He's got his eyes closed, bangs into a table awkwardly, and then goes running up to her, fucking telling her to, put her arms down, and then drapes his cloak, his nerdy cloak over her, which finally came in use. And then he jumps back through.
Those details are huge, man. When like his hip hitting the table, which kind of causes him a bit ajar, it makes it more heroic in the sense that it's more real. Like you said, if he just jumps, ta-da! Like he's just this magical hero that is. It just makes it so much more concrete for us because he is infallible. He has to be, or we don't buy it. You know what I mean? It makes it so much more, and it's more palpable because we're reminded of the physicality with him hitting the table. And it's a small thing, but it makes such a big difference. And like you said, then also the awkward. It's a bit awkward that her hands are up, and then it's like arms down, and he doesn't know if she can really hear him, but she follows that idea anyway. And then it's also like he doesn't carry her out like Prince Gallant in front of him. He throws her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. So it's not the storybook style, and it's pointing that out. And it's very effective because you buy it all. It seems so realistic because it's more concrete in those senses.
Yeah, and then also, too, another aspect of that is I drew a deep breath just before I hit the fire, but the air was sharp and acrid. I coughed reflexively and sucked down another lungful of the burning air just as I'd entered the wall of flame. I felt the sharp chill of the fog around my lower legs, and there was fire all around me as I ran, coughing and drawing in more bad air. I grew dizzy and tasted ammonia. Some distant, rational part of my mind thought, of course, to make it volatile. Then nothing.
Yeah, you made a big mistake.
Yeah, like banging into the table, breathing in the bad air, passing out.
Breathing in the bad air is the real mistake, because you have to know, man. You can't. He's not left with a lot of choices, but that's the knockout. That's what takes him out.
What you. But if you think about it, that's your whole instinct. You gotta breathe.
Yeah. Well, you're about to move, so you got to get a good breath now to be able to make this big move, and that's what takes him out.
So I want to get clarity here because I didn't really know. Seems like he took that second breath and then he said, and that was it. So I know he had gone through the wall of fire. Did Kvothe make it out, or just get he and Fella out of that initial harm's way and somebody pull him out?
Yeah, they got out. They got out, and then he dropped her and then passed out. Yeah.
He got through the wall of fire, and then, I always picture he
clearly
he just basically fell down and probably dumped her.
Right.
Like, she probably
got to safety. I just didn't know. Yeah. I just didn't know if he had actually, how far did he make it out? Just past that wall of fire? Did he, get all the way outside?
You would think, like, if someone had to drag them both to safety after that, or she had to drag him to safety, it would have been mentioned. So it seems like he got them out and then passed out.
It's cool. It's cool that it's a little bit. He doesn't tie the loose end on that. Yeah. It's. Right. I mean, it's better that way because we're left hanging. I mean, talk about a cliffhanger. For all we know, he's gonna die. Like we don't fucking know. We keep reading.
That's the other aspect of it. He doesn't even end the chapter there. Like that's normally a chapter ender, and he's just a pause, a break in the chapter, and then. When I woke, the first thing that sprang into my mind was not what you might expect. So the first thing he's thinking about is like, what the fuck time is it? Shit, I missed my fucking lunch with Denna.
Yeah.
No surprise there.
Speaks to, again, how freaking desperate he is, in love with her.
But no, I mean, he said he's not in love with her.
Yeah.
He said that explicitly.
So obviously he's not.
He says that explicitly.
She's not my girlfriend, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even like her, man. I don't even talk
like her. I just like her.
She doesn't like me.
We're friends, man. We're friends. I'm going to be her friend.
Such a jackass.
But yeah, it's
a couple of dorks.
It is pretty great. These little reminders, man. We know because we're constantly reminded, he's worried about money and all that. But once he loses his shoes, it becomes very real. Like, oh yeah, so that's it? Like, he's going to walk around barefoot until he can afford to get a pair of fucking shoes. Yeah. It's one thing to know he's got 2 shirts, but unless you're living his life, you don't really get that. But to be forced to have to walk around barefoot because you literally don't have another pair of shoes, he's a hero, but he's walking around with no shoes.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. It kind of throws him back to when, what was it? After he steps out of, when he's back in Tarbean, he steps out on the cobblestone at some point and realizes he doesn't have shoes. For whatever reason, it threw me back there because he's like, I don't have another pair of shoes. But I've been barefoot before, and it doesn't bother him, and he just heads straight right away out to the Aeolian without even thinking twice, barefoot.
Yeah, I like the touch though of just Sim going into his room and him just being like, "Oh, Jesus Christ," It's like this dude.
Yeah, I like the thing.
Because it's not like Sim's, a broke student. Sim's from a wealthy, noble family. Sim's not struggling. And so then Sim goes in there and he's like, I couldn't find another pair of shoes. And he only has 2 shirts. So he only had 1 shirt that he could choose from. Can't find any shoes. It's like, fuck. You just saw how fucking destitute I really am. And then Sim just waves it off like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, at least he doesn't mention it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he waves the comment off like, it's not a thing to him. He doesn't care. That's not why they're friends. He doesn't care about that shit. So, but Kvothe is
he should care.
Deeply
should have bought him some new shoes.
Yeah, that would have been the cool thing to do. But Kvothe would have fucking probably got pissed at Sim for doing it because he's so fucking prideful.
Yeah, no question.
But yeah, then he goes to the Aeolian, finds that Denna is left, and he's like, Diak's like, she asked about you, he said consolingly, and waited for a good long while too, almost an hour, longest I've ever seen that one sit still. Did she leave with someone? Diak looked down at his hands where he was toying with a copper penny, rolling it back and forth over his knuckles. She's not really the sort of girl who spends a lot of time alone. She turned a few away, but eventually leave with a fellow. I don't think she was really with him, if you catch my meaning. She's been looking for a patron, and this fellow had that sort of look about him. White-haired, wealthy, you know the type. If you happen to see her, could you tell her? I paused, trying to think of how I could describe what had happened. Can you make unavoidably detained sound a little more poetic? So, Denna meets her patron, and that's our strong
turning point in their relationship.
Yeah, but we get the only real description we get of her patron is that it's a white-haired, wealthy man. So we know he's an older guy, and
what if he's albino?
He's probably noble-esque.
What if he's seen something really scary? Got a real good scare.
Noble grounds.
Here's what's going to happen, Dan. You're going to find out that he's not old. He's an albino this whole time. Rothfuss really faked us out on that one.
Nah, that's a stupid theory.
He's young.
That's not good at all.
What if some people in this world just have white hair?
Yeah, albinos. What are you talking about?
Do albinos?
They would have said red eyes,
white hair,
something.
Yeah, I guess they do.
Yeah, so he has a touch of albinism, or most likely he's older. But he's
but if he was albino, he would have been burned at the stake. So,
jeez,
we don't get
any.
There's no
mentions.
way he would be wealthy.
We don't get mentions of albinism in the 2 books.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you think that is?
Word
Why do you
means
think
what you
that
think
is,
it
Tim?
means.
They get wiped out as soon as that is seen. They're gone.
Well, that's a jump.
Gene pool.
That's a jump. It could just be Rothfuss hasn't mentioned them. It could also be they don't exist. Albinism isn't a thing in their world. That could be.
I don't think albinism is a word in our world.
No.
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
No.
I don't think so. 2 against 1.
Up.
You could be 2 against 1 all like 1. You're just both wrong. I don't give a fuck.
Now, hey, we'll take a quick poll on it. Who's right, me and Fitz, or Tim? I'm going with me and Fitz.
Well, everyone listening,
me and Dan.
Everyone listening knows you're both stupid, so we're good.
You're an idiot. So.
Albinism.
There's that.
I visited my cousin in albinism last week.
You know what? At the end of the day, it is what it is.
Oh my god. So this dude, I mean, obviously he is Billy Badass. He's got all these burns all over his body. Still walks all the way to the Aeolian. We're not there yet, but still fucking makes his emitters. Like, holy shit. But yeah, so he goes back to Anchors, and we get another taste of him listening to his heroic acts, which he enjoys so much.
Yeah. Yeah, Kvothe and his hubris, the nerve.
I like that too, that he's like just like Prince Gallant after he was describing it as unlike Prince Gallant.
Yeah, it is funny. That kind of speaks to when he hears his own story. He's like, but this time it was real. this wasn't some made up shit. So it is like Pritzker. I'm fucking, yeah, man. He's really feeling himself.
Yeah. He loves hearing about how badass he is. This dude really loves stories about himself. Fucking goes, especially like when he gets back from Severin and he's just fucking going to bar after bar.
Yeah,
and listening to his stories, and then he would like pull his cloak up and let it billow in the air, and then like when they would notice him, then he would sing them some of his songs about Florian, and he'd fucking ham it up. Like, this dude, he loves when people talk about him.
Yeah, he's starting to become a bit of a character. Well, he's becoming a bit of a caricature in those senses, but you know. Yeah, especially that the shade, whatever, when it like billows on its own. That's another step of nerdiness right there, man. Like I picture like I don't know. There's certain video games where it's like, you know, it just constantly billows. There's no wind. No one else is getting hit with wind, but it's just majestic. Like, this guy thinks he's fucking Link from Zelda or something. Like,
yeah, he's got the magic cloak now. He's got the and the magic stick.
It does sound pretty badass. I can't lie about that. Having the shade does sound there'd be some real utility there.
Yeah, it that one at least has some utility where he can hide himself, where he can't even be seen in the dark. So it's a little less nerdy, but he nerds it up with his fucking going to bars and letting it fucking billow and look at me. Hey, you know, the redheaded hero. Look who has red hair with a weird cloak.
That weird cloak. That's something, man. Shadow cloak.
Yeah, but that was made by the woman no one else can tame.
Yeah, and the
it's
only
pretty big
person
feather
who
in your hat.
Anything of it really is Elodin. Shows how knowledgeable he is.
So you're saying nobody notices that it's a shadow cloak besides him?
Nobody notices that it's from the Fae besides him. Like, and Elodin does immediately as soon as he sees it.
But other people see it, right?
It's like, yeah, they see the cloak, but they just think it's a
Don't
cloak.
get it.
Yeah, they're not connecting the dots. Elodin knows immediately as soon as he sees him.
Right.
He like goes up and stops him.
It's like, when did you become in shade? And he's like, what? And he's like, don't you know what you're wearing? He's like, yeah, I know what I'm wearing. I'm surprised you do. And he's like, oh, I wouldn't be much of a namer if I couldn't see a fairy cloak, 5 feet away from me. But
I'm done with 66.
That was pretty much it for 66 for me.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all I had. Actually, there was one more thing. Mola, when they're at the when she's bandaging Kvothe up, she congratulated him for becoming Elfa. What's that?
No, he congratulated her.
That's the next level up.
Yeah, you go from Alir to Relar to Elfa.
Okay.
After that, you're basically...
Then it's Giller or Arcanist. Yeah.